All right, so we're live now. And hi, everybody. I'm Emily Sweeney. I'm with the Boston Globe, and I am here with my colleague, my esteemed colleague, always fabulous colleague, Meredith Goldstein. Hey, Meredith, how's it going?
Good. It's lovely to be here, and by here I mean the same place I've been for a year.
Well, hey, thank you so much for joining us. We've been interviewing, different writers and journalists over, the past few months, and actually throughout the pandemic, the New England SPJ chapter has. And we're happy to have you on the show. And, one of the first things I want to ask you is just a bit of background. I know you do love letters for the Globe, and you've been doing it for a while now, right?
12 years.
Oh my God. All right.
A lot of problems.
And I'm always so impressed by how popular. Like, I mean, I'm a love letters reader myself. I think you give great advice all the time. I gotta say, you do a great job. And I was wondering, like, how did you build up such a huge audience? I know every single time you have a column, you get like hundreds of like comments. And was that how did you do it?
Well, I mean, to be honest, when 12 years ago, Boston.com, the internet was a lot newer, right? I mean, sounds I'm going to date myself, but it was a much more streamlined place. Boston.com was the website for the Globe. And I really want, I mean, I think we worked together for a long time, that I was really interested in not only just features, but features about how people live and how people interact with each other in the world. And that was at the time where Facebook was newly public for non-college students. And um, the world was changing in terms of how we related. Phones were becoming smartphones. I mean, all of these things were brand new and evolving. And actually, some of those things happened after the column started. And, we really put up a question. And I have to say that our former colleague, Dave Beard, uh, pushed through what would have probably been a much lengthier red tape process of starting a column, and just said, let's just put up a call out for questions and see what we get. And people always ask, well, what made you decide you were qualified to answer? I mean, I certainly am not a mental health professional, but advice columnists, there's a long history of them being reporters who are really interested in reporting on the business of relationships. So, and maybe we're overconfident and have delusions of grandeur as well. So that plays into really feeling good about telling people what to do.
Hey,
But I
like,
do think it was, Boston. I'm not from Boston. I mean, you know this area better than anybody. You're rooted here. I living here 20 years, I still feel like a newcomer. And Boston is unlike, the Baltimore area where I'm, or the suburban Baltimore area where I'm from, I should say, in that it does consider itself the center of the universe. If you're, which is sort of a fun thing, right?
mhm.
And I knew that people would be interested in problems that came from people who might be in their backyards. So there's a little bit of a voyeurism too.
No, it's definitely true. And,
Yeah.
and you have like this legion of fans, all these regular commenters. I mean, how long have
Some of
they
them
been
are not
following you?
fans, but even if they like to hate me, at least they show up.
There you go, right? Now, also, now you have how many books out? I feel like you've written quite a few books now.
4.
All
That
right.
sounds wrong, but it's true. But I, it's funny. Like it really feels like I have a new young adult book out, Things That Grow, but it feels like that's my second book because I wrote the 3 other books I wrote were the first in a genre. So like this felt like a sophomore effort in the way that the others didn't, because I was always writing a first book in a different genre. So
Mhm.
this Things That Grow being a second young adult release is actually the most challenging book I've written, because I think that sophomore effort is always really hard.
Yeah. Now, how did you get into the young adult genre? Like, I've been also meaning to ask you that.
I mean, I think we're around the same age. I feel like when we were younger, there were
Mhm.
certainly like young adult books, but the national interest in them was different. I mean, they were very much like much more for kids. And I think that as Twilight happened and Harry Potter happened, and some of these books that were labeled as young adult actually called for broader audiences. I think about the Hunger Games. Um, it brought in a readership that then said, oh, well, if we like these supernatural books, we also like these other books. These, just fiction YA books, and they're very. I think there's something very powerful about reading somebody's first love story or first story about grief or it calls to the adolescent in all of us that still exists. So I think for me, writing these books is sort of a way to sort of get out a primal thing that I might yell but wouldn't because I'm in my 40s. And, it's never surprising to me that older people want to read and write young adult, because I think we might pretend that these big life changes don't affect us when we get older, but they do.
That's true. Totally true. Now, so when did your latest book come out, and what's the best way for people to order it? Like directly from the publisher? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So March 9th, the book came out, and I would say order it from any indie bookstore. Support your local indie. Last night we had a great Boston.com event with Newtonville Books. Love Newtonville Books. And bookshop.org is great because you can choose which indie bookstore you want the money sent to. So you don't even have to go anywhere. Oh, it's totally great. And by the way, if you're an audiobook person, Libro.fm is the independent version of that. So you can actually even order audiobooks and support local bookstores that way as well.
All right, that's excellent.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
I mean,
now, are you having any readings? Like, what are you doing? Like, how's it been promoting a book during these pandemic times?
Here's the horrible thing, which I may regret saying, but like I liked it. So I love, me, I'm social. I might be an introvert. I think I've always been an extroverted introvert, and I didn't quite know that. So I can be extroverted, but then I can go back into my, shell.
Okay.
And I think that having these events online, even like what we're doing now, it's like, I know that after this, I can just like decompress, right? And I think also there's a really great accessibility side effect of this, which is that people can get there without having to get there. The barrier for a lot of people to go to a bookstore in a city at night, even in the suburbs at night, whether it's because of chronic illness, whether it's because they have children who need to go to bed and be watched, like I didn't realize how complicated it was for people to even engage in live book events until this, because now they can go. Now I can go. It used to be that I could go to a friend's book launch or not. Now I can be in my pajamas cooking dinner and absolutely support them and support the bookstore. I mean, it was really cool. Like I did the launch with Porter Square, and my relatives in California could come. So I think, listen, do I wish we could also be in bookstores and hope that we can get back there? Absolutely. But I hope that one thing that remains is that there's still a link, that the people who can't get there for whatever reason can still engage without having to be there in person. Like I want both.
Mm-hmm. No, it's awesome. Now, do you have any events coming up that you'd like to let our audience know about?
So one that I'm excited about that hasn't been announced yet is that there is a scene in the book that takes place in the Arboretum in Jamaica Plain and Rosendale. And it's about my fictional characters, my young adult characters, forest bathe. They do a forest bathing activity. And people keep asking me when they read the book, is that a real thing that happens? And is it a real thing that happens in the Arboretum? And the answer is yes. Toadstool Walks is the company that locally leads these forest bathing exercises, and it's like a ritual. It's like a meditation ritual. And by the way, I'm a very cynical person who does not meditate. So, but when I did it, I really loved it, and I wanted these fictional characters to have that experience. So, early June, I believe it's June 1st. We're going to be announcing it soon. We're going to do a book event, but with talking about it through the lens of the forest bathing community, which I think will be so cool because it's just the most common question I get. Can I do that too? And I think one of the reasons I loved writing the book as a journalist is because it's a celebration. The main character takes her grandmother's ashes to gardens around New England, but they're real gardens. So in writing the book, I got to do extensive research into all of these gardens and into practices like forest bathing. So if you go to Toadstool Walks and keep checking in. And tomorrow, there's a group called the EOL Collective. It's an end of life organization that 7 o'clock our time in New England, but 4 o'clock Pacific time, I'll be taking part in a different kind of conversation, which is about teenagers and grief. And how, you know, how we're supposed to talk to kids about grief, and because this main character loses her grandmother. So that's an event tomorrow that, if you're a parent, I think is probably a good thing to attend. But yeah, I mean, I have to say that, like, in a normal year, I'd be running around from bookstore to bookstore, but this has made everyone very thoughtful about, well, what are the conversations we want to have, and what are the conversations we need to have.
Mhm. Oh, totally. It's really impressive that, you have 4 books out. I know, obviously, you're very busy. I know everybody at the Globe are always, working very hard. And I was wondering, how do you manage your time and split your time between doing, your work at the Globe and writing books?
I mean, I can't write all day and then write at night. So I'm not one of those people
You
that's
need a
like,
break at some point,
yeah,
right?
like I can't do that. So I really do a lot on the weekends. And
Mhm.
I also, listen, I don't have kids. Like, a lot of parents will say to me, "How do you do this?" And I'm like, "Well, all those times you're taking kids to hockey practice or whatever, it's I don't feel bad if you're someone who is having trouble doing this side project, and you have like humans in your life that you care about. I mean, I have humans in my life I care about too, but they don't require uh, being taken to places, really.
Constant care and feeding.
Right? They don't require
Yeah.
care and feeding, right? So, but I think also, especially like, first of all, everybody who writes a book generally does have a day job. Like, unless you accidentally wrote 50 Shades of Grey, somebody you're teaching, you're doing something, and I just feel like it's supposed to be slow. There are people who are incredibly prolific, and they make you feel bad, and you wonder how they get it done. And I can't write a book in under a few years. Like, it takes me years, because I do have a day job. So I just feel like I do this stuff on weekends, but it doesn't mean that I won't see my friends, and it doesn't mean that, um, it doesn't mean that I have to do it every Saturday. And whoever said you have to write every day, I don't believe that's true. Especially if you're in journalism, you're thinking every day, and that's all you need.
Mhm. No, totally true. And we have a lot of journalists that are going to be tuning in and watching this on YouTube afterwards. And one thing I always like to ask, our guests is, do you have any advice for up and coming, journalists, journalism students, maybe people at their first job that want to, get into the book publishing world, or, become an advice columnist? Like, any suggestions for them?
I first think that you know you first of all, you don't have to read a bunch of them to do it. I think that if you feel like you've got the bug to do it, don't be shy about it. I also think that there's a real long history of straight white Jewish women who are advice columnists. And I didn't even know that when I started it. And then I was like, oh, wait. And Dan Savage, there are obviously many exceptions of people who, especially now, who do this. But one of my favorite advice columns is Ola Poppy, which is JP Brammer's column, and really caters to like a, a broad audience, but he's also gay, and has has a completely different background from mine. And I think what I love about the way advice columns work is there doesn't have to only be one. There can be like 10, and they can all be amazing. And sometimes I wish we could all get into a room and answer. And I try to be as intersectional as I possibly can with my advice. But I love the idea, especially for younger journalists, that it doesn't have to be, not everybody has to look the same, nor should they. So I think advice columnists, for the most part these days, we boost each other, and we like each other's opinions. And I'll be moderating JP's book release for his memoir in June at Brookline Booksmith, online, of course. And I'm so psyched, right? Because if I read an advice column, it's his, right? So I just think that um, getting that person to believe that you have the passion to do it. Like, I had an editor who believed that I could, or at least that I could try, and not being afraid to say you want to do it. And I also think, even if it's not an advice column, even if it's just writing about relationships, even if it's about writing about weddings. I mean, here's the thing, like, and I'm not a big wedding person, but like, I used to make all these jokes about love letters, like, oh, like people pay me to do this, like as if it's not a real job. But like Dan Shaughnessy at the Globe, the sports writers do not say that. They don't say that, oh, well, here I am covering like a silly game. Like, they don't say that because Right. I mean, you're laughing because it's laughable, right? Because we know that this is a billion-dollar industry that they're actually covering. And what I would say to you is if you're interested in the world of relationships, it's also a billion-dollar industry. Weddings are, dating is, divorce is, childcare is. You know, so many straight men say to me, "Oh, I read your column, even though I'm not your demographic." And I'm like, dude, enough of you say that to me that you are. If you're a human who loves any other human in the world, you are my demographic. And I would just say that this is the soapbox I clearly love to get on, but when we look back at media companies and newspapers and digital news sources to see history, it's often not sports and news. Certainly it's news, but it's often not, it's often stories about how people lived. And I think that advice columns are a great time capsule. So, but so are stories about wedding trends, and so are stories about, you know, I mean, the number of people who get the Times just to read the vows section is high. In fact, I think one of the shortcomings of the Globe in terms of its coverage is in a community like New England, why isn't there a vows section there too? If there were 4 pages of wedding announcements, I think people would read it.
Seriously. Well, I love your column, and you know, I read it all the time. And what's the best way for people to check it out? You know,
So Boston.com.
Is it loveletters.com? I don't want to give the wrong website.
Boston.com/loveletters. I wish it
Okay.
was loveletters.com because the person who owns that is like unreachable.
Oh God.
If I could go back into a time machine, I would name the column something very specific, which I did not do because.
Oh really? What would you name it?
I don't know, but it would be something that didn't. You know, there's a play called Love Letters. There's a movie called Love Letters. There's a lot of love letters out there, and it's a little bit harder of a Google. And if you want to check out the podcast also, I'm just so proud of the podcast and the stories we tell and people getting to tell their own stories. So, and that's also called Love Letters, but boston.com/love letters, and you can find everything. And yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, you know, I want to thank you so much, Meredith, for taking the time to chat with us. And I want to thank SPJ and the New England chapter of SPJ. If you have a chance to follow them on Twitter, their Twitter handle is SPJ_New England. And yeah, thank you so much, Meredith. I really appreciate it.
Thank
it's good
you.
To see you.
Good to see you.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.